Introduction to Go's farming and becoming an immortal in the family. Traveling through the world of cultivating immortals with numerous sects and families, Chen An, as a member of a small family, was suppressed by the Qingyun Sect at the top and watched by many hostile families at the bottom. He expressed great anxiety. Fortunately, with the awakening of the golden finger of farming, one can reap rewards. From then on, without leaving the gate, one can also have countless resources, enough to survive until the end of time. Chapter 1. Farming and Planting Techniques. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the time dimension is September, and the sequence belongs to the 3-autumn period. Yunwu Mountain, a separate courtyard. Chen An, no way. Stop it now. An old man shouted and hurriedly ran towards Chen An, narrowly supporting his fallen figure. A dozen or so young and teenage girls in the courtyard, mixed with slightly mature faces, were standing in front of the Nanma table, holding talismans. When they noticed the movement around them, they all stopped at the same time. It's just a symbol, there's no need to spell it that way, right? What's the use of piecing together? Even if there are a dozen or so pieces, not a single one can be achieved. This talent can only be used for farming. The old man ignored the noisy sounds around him and looked down at Chen An, whose face was pale, to check his physical condition. Discovering that Chen An had only consumed excessive spiritual power and was not in great danger, his expression slightly softened. Where am I? Chen An's head was dizzy and his body was exhausted, as if his body had been emptied. He opened his eyes and saw an old face full of concern. His heart was shaken, and memories flooded in like a tide. Chen An. The 3 elders apprenticed to the talisman master. Did you consume too much spiritual energy during the assessment? The old man saw Chen An wake up and asked, "Are you okay?" Chen An was stunned and said, "It shouldn't be a big deal." The old man nodded and a hint of anger appeared on his face. "What were you doing just now? You exhausted your spiritual power and forced a talisman. Maybe it will damage your foundation. You don't want to live anymore." The other party preached a few words, shook their head, and left Chen An alone to rest. Chen An held on to his drowsy head and was stunned for a moment. After organizing his memories from 2 lifetimes, he finally realized that just now, he had broken through the mystery of the fetus and awakened Su Hui. He was a social animal in his past life and suffered extreme oppression from his boss. He died suddenly while staying up late at the company to change plans. Unexpectedly, he traveled to this world of cultivation and became a 16-year-old cultivator of the Chen family in the Cultivation family. He possessed a lower-level spiritual root and cultivated a second level of qi cultivation. The old man just now is Qin Yuanzhong, the 3rd elder of the Chen family. He is proficient in the art of talismanship, and all high-level talismans of the Chen family come from his hands. Today, a group of cultivators of different ages gathered here to undergo the assessment of the 3 elders, attempting to become apprentices of a talisman master under their tutelage. Although the family is famous for farming in the Qingyun domain, compared to daily farming, rolling in the mud makes it easier for them to become a talisman master, earn more, and have higher requirements for talent. There were many young cultivators who came upon hearing the news, but the quota was limited. A dozen or so people competed for 3 positions, so naturally they had to assess and select the best one. The Chen family is a small family that started with the cultivation of spiritual plants, with the highest level of cultivation being the Chen family's old master in the early days of foundation construction. At that time, the Chen family had established rules for the development of their family and the cultivation of their descendants. Regardless of whether their spiritual roots were good or bad, anyone with spiritual roots would be provided with a certain amount of cultivation resources free of charge by the family for 3 years of cultivation. Chen An has just entered the path of cultivation, and over the past 2 years, he has been able to step into the second level of qi cultivation. He knew that he had the ability to lower his spiritual roots, and without sufficient resources, it would be difficult for him to enter the middle stage of Qi cultivation in the future. In order to have a skill to earn spiritual stones in the future, he also came and gave it a try. But his skills were not perfect, and he didn't succeed in any of them. In a hurry, he forcefully drew talismans, resulting in the scene of fainting before. Chen An was resting when he heard the deep voice of the three elders Qingyun. Those who read their names should stay, and the others should leave on their own. Chen Zhilan, Chen Dengming, Chen Dazhuang. No surprise, there is no name for Chen An. However, this is also expected. In front of everyone's eyes, if there is really his name, that is the big dark curtain. As everyone dispersed with disappointment on their faces, leaving only the three who had passed the assessment with joy on their faces, Chen An slowly stood up with the armrests of his chair, bid farewell to the three elders, and turned around to leave. After leaving the courtyard, a tall and thin figure blocked the way ahead. "Didn't you pass the exam?" Looking up, it was Chen San. With a hint of smile on his lips, Chen An retorted, "Didn't you also fail?" "I'm just here to join in the fun." Chen San smiled and reached out to take out a seed, saying, "But don't be discouraged. Compared to talismans, you still have some talent in farming. This seed was obtained by me from a relic, and its appearance is truly extraordinary. For the sake of our past friendship, I'll sell it to you at a cheap price. 10 inferior spirit stones are good." Chen An glanced at the gray seed and rolled his eyes. The linen talisman drawn during the previous assessment was instigated by the other party to spend all the spiritual stones on his body and buy an incomplete picture book. Even the talisman pen was borrowed from Elder San. And now, he has come to bewitch him again. Chen An twitched his lips and said, "I don't have any extra spirit stones left. Let's talk about it another day." Chen San, who had previously cultivated land in his clan and later made a living by hunting monsters, went to the market under the Qingyun Sect 2 years ago and lost all his capital. Now he has returned to his family. "I often sell worthless things to younger generations like them who have not yet delved into the world." After Chen An refused the other party, he didn't stop and followed the direction of the stone house courtyard in his memory. The body has not yet recovered, so you cannot waste time outside. Soon, a small courtyard measuring 3 to 4 zhang in length and width appeared in front of me, surrounded by blue stone walls. 2 towering trees stood at the entrance. One is a green pine, and the other is also a green pine. Although they are the same type of tree, the meaning they represent in Chen An's heart is different. The one in the east represents the father, and the one in the west represents the mother. At the age of 8, he planted 2 pine trees for a simple reason, hoping that his parents would be like these 2 pine trees for a long time and always accompany him. "I don't want to, the sky doesn't meet people's wishes." The second old man living in the ordinary town of the Chen family at the foot of the mountain, knowing that his son's talent was not high, had the intention to climb the nearby mountain range together a year ago, attempting to pick a few spiritual herbs in order to help the immortal son. However, on the way back, both of them stumbled and fell off a cliff. When the Chen family discovered them, they were still tightly holding on to Lingji in their hands. Unfortunately, they were already out of breath. After his parents passed away, he longed for his 2 elders and moved them over. Staring blankly at the verdant pine trees in front of him, even though Chen An had been a person of 2 generations, his nose couldn't help but ache. Pack up your mood, wait for your mind to calm down a bit, then push the door and walk in. On a black soil about the size of 2 halves in the yard, there are more than 10 low-level spiritual plants planted, with slender stems and lush leaves. Under Chen An's careful care, the spiritual plants emit vitality. This is silver leaf jute, a lower-level spiritual value that is relatively easy to survive. It is mostly used to make talisman paper for use by talismans. In addition to silver leaf jute, there are also 2 first-order lower-grade spiritual fruits, bearing 5 heavy fruits, one of which is completely red and obviously ripe. This fruit is called jasper fruit, and taking it can slightly increase spiritual power. Zhaozuiyuan.com. The spiritual plants in the courtyard are the easy-to-survive species planted by Chen An during his leisure time. When they mature, they can be considered as some income. Chen An didn't pay much attention to the scene in front of him, but went directly to the quiet room and sat down cross-legged. Previously, there was excessive consumption, and we must quickly recover. Delaying it for too long may lead to problems. Silently operating the Qingmu Gong technique, nourishing the empty body. Qingmu Gong is one of the traditional martial arts of the Chen family. According to legend, this technique was created by predecessors who observed and felt the green pine, based on its toughness and evergreen characteristics throughout the year. Perennial cultivation has the effect of prolonging life, but the only drawback is that the cultivation speed is slow and not good at fighting. One night passed. In the early morning, the courtyard was shrouded in a mist as gentle as thin gauze, wetting the black soil and washing the branches and leaves of more than 10 spiritual plants. Especially the spiritual value of the 2 jade fruits, verdant and dripping, compared to yesterday, they are even more charming and charming. Chen An inspected twice and looked at the pine pagoda hanging on the green pine trees at the door. He touched his hungry stomach and said, "This pine pagoda is almost cooked, you can fry it to press your stomach. In my previous life, I lived in the mountains and ate a lot of pine nuts on weekdays." He stepped forward and took off one, which had not yet been properly collected, but found that a fist-sized light ball had fallen from the position of the pine tower he had just taken off, falling next to the green pine. The light flickered, and little spiritual light dissipated. Chen An was curious and reached out his palm to gently touch. In an instant, the light cluster turned into starlight and rushed into his body, suddenly flashing a message in his mind. Harvest a pine tower and obtain the Qingmu skill. Before he could react, a torrent of information suddenly rushed through Chen An's mind. In just a few breaths, the Qingmu Gong, which had just been activated last night, had a deeper understanding of it. Chapter 2. Accelerated Cultivation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Under the green pine tree, Chen An's eyes widened and he looked incredulously at the pine tower in his hand. After digesting the enlightenment of the martial arts and confirming that everything was not an illusion, he looked up at the green pine in front of him. The tree was full of dang, with 30 or 40 pine pagodas hanging, swaying and tempting. The Qingmu Gong is a technique that predecessors gained from the insights of Qingsong, and it seems that there is nothing wrong with it. Just as I was about to continue picking, the light in front of me twisted and a line of semi-transparent handwriting gradually appeared. Qingsong, originally an ordinary tree, after more than 2 years of using the spirit rain technique to nourish, now has the potential to advance into a spirit tree. Above the handwriting, there is still a progress bar hanging, and the progress is already full. Chen An felt a sense of joy in his heart, as there would always be a reward for his efforts, and his efforts over the past 2 years were not in vain. Suppressing his excitement, he saw no one around and reached out to pick the pine pagoda on the tree. 2 trees, about 70 light balls falling to the ground, were also picked up by him one by one. After the last beam of light rushed into his body to absorb it, Chen An's mind was filled with a roar. Many experiences and insights were integrated, as if he had been practicing Qingmu Gong for more than 10 years, which directly elevated his level of expertise in this technique. The confusion of the past are like snow under the scorching sun, melting in an instant. Qingmu Gong flows through the meridians of the body, with less stagnation and more smoothness. Chen An felt the earth-shattering change and secretly felt that if he were to meditate and practice now, the effect would at least double compared to before. Looking at the empty pine trees, he nodded unsatisfied and turned to the yard to take out a basket. He packed a pile of pine towers and placed them in a corner of the kitchen for later consumption. Later, no matter what, the pine tower came to the yard and looked at one of the ripe jade fruits, eagerly reaching out to pick it. Harvest a high-quality jade fruit and obtain the spirit rain technique high quality. This is mostly of higher quality. Before Chen An could think carefully, he felt a roar coming from his mind. The magical perception of Lingyu technique is more than a little stronger than that of Aoki Gong just now. The latter is like a small stream, trickling down, while the former is like a big river, with turbulent waves. Chen An calmed down a bit, collected the jade fruit, pinched the formula with both hands, and after 3 breaths, a faint spiritual cloud above the spiritual plant slowly gathered and formed, just covering the spiritual field in front of him. Slight drizzle falls, silently nourishing the spiritual plants in the courtyard. 3 breaths. Proficient. Chen An's face moved slightly. It should be noted that his spirit rain technique was only used as a beginner's spin before, and it would take at least 5 breaths to unleash. Moreover, the coverage area is not as large as this, usually requiring 2 rounds of watering to complete. This time, only 1 round was used. Chen An gazed at the jade fruit plant, and information reappeared before her eyes. Jasper fruit, first-level lower-grade spiritual plant, just moisturized by Lingyu technique, in good condition. Silver leaf jute, a first-order lower-grade spiritual plant, has limited space and crowded underground roots, which is not conducive to growth. The progress bars for the 2 spiritual plants are almost full and about to mature. Chen An sighed inwardly, as he only had this small spiritual field, there was no better or larger environment, so he had to squeeze in first. Being able to check the status of spiritual plants is quite helpful for him, who currently has limited knowledge. If there are any problems in the future, he can also discover them in a timely manner. After the new year, there will be a period of 3 years. If you choose this path, as long as you have the cultivation of cultivating 3 layers of qi, you can indeed be allocated a whole acre of lower-grade spiritual field. Thinking of the gains just now, Chen An had a vague expectation for what would happen in the new year. Even if there is no chance of encountering the Tao, if one can diligently cultivate within their clan, there is always a possibility of exploring the path. However, for now, let's find a way to obtain an acre of spiritual field from our tribe. This piece of land in our family is too small. After checking the state of the spiritual plant, Chen An pinched the rosy spiritual fruit on his hand. Compared to the harvest of the spell, this jade fruit appeared somewhat insignificant. Rubbing it against his clothes, Chen An looked down at the fresh, juicy, and fruity jade fruit, suppressing the urge to take a bite. At present, it is more practical to exchange cultivation resources for eating directly. Moreover, there is still some lingmi to eat at home. Immediately, Chen An crawled into the kitchen. There are still many yellow sprouted rice in the rice jar, which is a monthly distribution of 30 kilograms of inferior spiritual rice within the clan. Now only a few kilograms are left. I have no choice but to be poor. It is true that the family supports cultivators with spiritual roots for 3 years, but it is not an unlimited supply of resources, which is extremely limited. This is much better than scattered repairs like rootless duckweed. At least there is a family behind it, so there is no need to rush around for a living. If one lacks ambition and cultivates crops and harvests spiritual rice within their clan, they can still live a peaceful and mediocre life for hundreds of years. Chen An measured his future prospects, took a spoonful of lingmi from the pot, poured it into the mountain spring water, and ignited the firewood with a fire bullet technique. Soon, the fragrance of lingmi permeated the entire kitchen. Smelling the tempting aroma of rice, Chen An's fingers twitched. Immediately pick up a sea bowl half the size of a basin, fill yourself with a bowl, and in a moment, consume the lingmi. As soon as I had a full hiccup, I felt a trickle of water flowing through my limbs and bones. We can't waste it. According to our previous habit, after eating lingmi, we have to meditate and exercise our skills. Stepping into the quiet room, Chen An sat on a cushion and silently practiced his techniques. After a week, the spiritual power in the meridians runs smoothly without any stagnation, and even the absorption of spiritual power from the spiritual rice is much faster than before. After refining the spiritual rice, Chen An did not stop, but took advantage of this hot energy to continue practicing. With the continuous influx of spiritual energy from the surrounding world into the body, at the end of the day, on top of the spiritual power cloud cluster in the Dantian, look for the second cloud cluster in the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com, which is much smaller in size and has clearly grown slightly. Chen An frowned and said, at this speed, in about 3 more months, you will be able to step into the 3rd level of qi cultivation. This is about 3 or 4 months faster than originally expected. However, this can only be achieved under the premise of having lingmi every day. The yellow sprouted rice in the rice jar obviously won't last long, and there is still some time before the end of the month. Fortunately, the spiritual value has been planted in the courtyard, and it should be fully matured in the next few days. At that time, you can also exchange some spiritual rice in the clan for consumption. 2 days later. Chen An woke up early, and just as the sky had turned white, he walked to the courtyard. According to the progress bar of spiritual values, there are probably a few mature plants today. He took the time to run to the nearby mountains in the past 2 days and found several wild growing pine trees. Coincidentally, he also encountered a first-order inferior spiritual medicine. Unfortunately, no matter how much he picked, no light ball fell and he could only return in frustration. It is obvious that plants not cultivated by oneself will not yield any additional harvest. After a moment of contemplation, I was about to step forward to inspect the spiritual plants in the courtyard when I heard a knock outside the door. Chen An was a bit disappointed and walked slowly over. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a man with messy hair and a few mud stains on his body flash in. Chen An, bad news. Chen An glanced closely and saw that this person was Chen Fengshua, who lived nearby and was several years older than him. He took care of a family-allocated spiritual field. The two of them live not far away and are from the same family, so they know each other. I saw the other party pulling up Chen An's arm with an anxious expression. The rice in my spiritual field has attracted black worms, which are not easy to clean. You also have spiritual value in your yard, so you need to be careful lately. Chapter 3, First Income. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Upon hearing this, Chen An's heart was shaken. He used to communicate with nearby ethnic people and had heard a few words before. It is said that this black thread worm is difficult to detect, and once discovered, it has mostly parasitized within the spiritual value, making it extremely difficult to remove. If left unchecked, the insect eggs will soon spread throughout the entire spiritual field. Didn't you already practice the gum gold sword finger? Chen An was puzzled in his heart. Chen Fengshua's eyebrows were almost twisted and he said, I can't go anywhere. Unless there is someone with the gum gold sword pointing at Xiaocheng, I can control the subtle and eliminate it without damaging the plant. Upon hearing this, Chen An remembered that his spiritual rain technique seemed to have reached proficiency, and with just a few more harvests, he should be able to be promoted to Xiaocheng. I don't know if this gum gold sword finger can be planted, as it is one of the indispensable means for cultivating spiritual fields. I'll come over and remind you that it's getting late. I need to quickly find my tribe members to help, sigh. As Chen Fengshua sighed and left, Chen An gently shook his head. Planting spiritual fields has never been easy. Not only is it hard, but one also needs to be constantly vigilant against insect infestations, bird infestations, and even rodent infestations. One mistake can result in no harvest. No wonder there were so many clan members who applied to become Fuwen Master's apprentices with the 3 elders before. Any other skill is much more profitable than farming. After tidying up his mood, Chen An returned to the hospital and checked the status of his spiritual values, confirming that there were no abnormalities. Only then did he remove the mature spiritual values. Harvest a silver leaf jute and obtain a first-level lower-grade rune paper Fu paper. Chen An's eyes lit up and he directly harvested the finished product. Silver leaf jute is originally a material used to make talisman paper, which eliminates many intermediate processes. Of course, a normal production of silver leaf jute requires more than one piece. Harvest a high-quality silver leaf jute plant and obtain a first-order inferior hemp clothing talisman high-quality spiritual value. Chen An lowered his head and looked at the yellow talisman in his hand, his surprise hard to conceal in his expression. Ma-yi Fu is a lower-level spiritual talisman with a certain defensive effect. It is a commonly used technique by lower-level cultivators and is worth a spiritual stone. It seems that the higher the quality of spiritual growth, the richer the harvest. It's time to change the planting method, it's necessary to cultivate carefully. After receiving 4 talismans, 1 linen robe talisman, and 1 spiritual rain spell, Chen An finally gave up. I feel that if I harvest the jade fruit again, the spirit rain technique should be able to be promoted again. After harvesting the mature spiritual plants, gazing at them, each plant grows well, with only a few or 3 plants, slightly wilting and somewhat different. I'm starving and thirsty all over, I really want to have a refreshing spiritual rain. Chen An's heart moved as he was about to use the spirit rain technique, when a flash of inspiration flashed in his mind. In the next moment, a rain cloud converged over the spiritual field, and strands of fine rain dripped down. However, the coverage area has been much smaller compared to last time, just covering those few thirsty spiritual plants. Applying the spirit rain technique according to your needs will have a better growth effect. In this way, you have to come and check it 2 or 3 times a day, and you can't just ignore it once in the morning like before. Thinking that the harvest would get better and better in the future, Chen An was full of enthusiasm, but after inspecting around, all the plants, including the green pine in front of the door, were in good condition and had nothing to do. I had to hold back my hot blood and return to the quiet room to continue my practice. 3 more days later, the spiritual plants in Tanaka were basically mature. The spiritual rice in the rice jar has already bottomed out. In order not to delay cultivation, Chen An plans to harvest spiritual points today and go to the family residence to exchange some spiritual rice to assist in cultivation. Under his meticulous care, the spiritual plants in the courtyard have slightly improved in quality compared to the previous few days. After all, it is a temporary change in approach before maturity, and it cannot have a very good effect. But even so, it still gave Chen An a considerable gain. Harvest a high quality silver leaf jute plant and obtain a first-order inferior hemp clothing talisman. Harvest 1 jade fruit, get an additional jade fruit. Is that all? The expected spirit rain technique did not appear, only an additional one. Well, it's not bad either. At least it's a double harvest, and you can exchange some more spirit stones. After collecting the remaining silver leaf jute and jasper fruit, a high-quality jasper fruit was unexpectedly produced again, and Lingyu art was promoted again. For over 2 years since planting Lingtian, Chen An has been most skilled in jasper fruit. It only takes 1 breath to perform, and the coverage has also increased significantly. Moreover, the spiritual energy contained in the rainwater seems to have increased slightly. It's already a small achievement. Not bad, as long as you are honest and farming in your family, the future is promising. Chen An packed the jade fruit and silver leaf jute in a bag and walked leisurely towards the family residence. There are less than 100 cultivators in the Chen family, most of whom are in the early stages of qi cultivation and make a living by farming. Generally, they only come here when there are problems with the spiritual field. There are not many monks who come and go to the family residence on weekdays. Chen An walked into a family courtyard with blue bricks and red tiles, with an ancient and simple design, occupying an area as large as a palace. There are not many monks coming and going, but only ordinary people from the Chen family who reside here to take care of the daily life of their clan. 2 young people in their 20s, who were chatting and laughing, walked towards Chen An. They saw Chen An dressed in a monk's robe, with a restrained smile, and respectfully bowed to Chen An. Chen An nodded slightly, didn't pay much attention, and walked towards the Chen family affairs hall. Upon entering, I found an elderly man in his 60s sitting inside, squinting his eyes and drowsy. He noticed someone entering and immediately woke up. "Elder, how have you been lately?" Chen An smiled and bowed with a bow. It's your kid, the spiritual plants in the courtyard have matured again, right? The elder yawned and glanced at the bag in Chen An's hand. Hee, the elder is really wise like a torch. Don't flatter me, except for this matter. You always go to the Three Treasures Hall for nothing. Bring it to me for a look. In the bag, there are 7 jade fruits and more than 10 silver leaf jute plants. Originally 5, 2 of them received an additional 1. High-quality spiritual plants. You can do it, kid. Surprisingly, 3 plants and 2 high-quality silver leaf jute plants have been produced. Not bad, not bad. Your level of jade fruit cultivation seems to have improved again. The elder glanced at Chen An as if he had already understood him and said, if what I expected is not bad, your spirit rain technique should have made some progress, reaching 3 breaths. Find the book Garden www.zhaozuiyuan.com. Chen An couldn't help but praise, the great elder really knows everything well and can't hide anything from you. He added a sentence in his heart, but it was still one step short. My spiritual rain technique has already been perfected. The elder stroked his beard with a proud expression and said, when I was young, I also planted spiritual fields for a few years. How could I not know about this? Not bad, work hard. After the new year, there will be 100 acres of inferior spiritual fields in the tribe, and you should have 1 acre. 2 plants of jade fruit and 1 spirit stone, 1 high-quality plant and 1 spirit stone, 3 plants of silver leaf and yellow hemp and 1 spirit stone, 2 high-quality plants and 1 spirit stone, all worth 10 spirit stones in total. The elder's gaze swept and he calculated the price in an instant. Is there anything that needs to be exchanged? Chen An replaced more than 10 silver leaf jute seeds and spent a total of 1 spirit stone. There were still plants left in the jasper fruit, so there was no need to replant it. Could you please bring me 3 thick soil mushroom seeds and replace the rest with lingmi, old man? Silver leaf jute should be related to the production of talismans and can continue to be planted, while thick soil mushroom is a rich variety of spiritual plants, which can be considered as a new variety to try. While the elder was busy, Chen An saw a treasure exchange catalog from the service hall on the counter. With a sudden movement in my heart, I flipped through a few pages, which recorded the prices of techniques, spells, magical tools, and auxiliary cultivation pills. The nourishing chi pill among them made him quite tempted. Although the prices in the clan were much cheaper than those in the surrounding market, unfortunately, due to financial constraints, he could only hesitate. Taking the seeds and carrying a bag of 45-pound spiritual rice, Chen An bid farewell to the elder and turned around to leave. The elder looked at Chen An's gradually receding figure and nodded in admiration. This kid's cultivation ability is not very good. He has some talent in farming, but he is also a cultivable talent. Chapter 4. Qingying grass. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Chen An walked briskly towards his residence. As he approached the door, he saw a sneaky figure peeking towards the courtyard through the crack in the door. Take a closer look, isn't this Chen San who used to trick him into buying seeds? I asked why there was no response inside. It turned out that my virtuous nephew was out. Chen San looked straight at Chen An carrying a bag on his shoulder and faintly smelled the fragrance of rice. Chen An raised her eyebrows and said, I just went to the tribe to exchange some lingmi. Do you have anything to do? Oh, nothing else, my seed. Don't. There must be nothing good about this guy's move. Chen An stepped forward and crossed over the other person, intending to go home. Hey, dear nephew, wait a moment. Chen San reached out and stopped Chen An with a mysterious expression, saying, I have seen the seeds from last time with people in my clan. They are the seeds of the green firefly grass, which is the main medicine for refining the qi nourishing pill. They are rare. Green firefly grass is one of the most expensive plants in the first-grade spiritual plants, which is indeed rare, but the young master cannot afford it. Chen An originally intended to send the other party away, but when he looked at the several seeds of ash in their hands, the light in his eyes suddenly twisted a few times. He felt a movement in his heart and calmly shook the bag of spiritual rice on his shoulder, saying, "The seeds are good, but unfortunately, I just changed to spiritual rice and don't have any spiritual stones on me anymore. Hee, even Lingmi is fine. 5 pounds, I'll take it all." Chen An, who was originally overjoyed, darkened upon hearing this price and said, "Your price is too low. 5 pounds of lingmi is only worth 1 lingshire. Don't sell, pull down." Chen An felt bitter when he saw the other party leaving. A few days ago, he found someone to recognize these seeds and relied on his farming skills that had not yet been planted, intending to plant them himself. "I have been working hard for many days without any movement. Based on past experience, it is highly likely that these seeds have problems. At least it's the seed of the green firefly grass. According to the market price, these 12 can be worth 3 spirit stones. How much more? 10 pounds. Just 5 pounds. Seeing that the other party remained unmoved and had a strong tendency to turn his head and leave after a difficult negotiation, Chen An gritted his teeth and had to nod in agreement, "Okay. As an elder, if I suffer a loss of 5 pounds, I will pay 5 pounds. However, let's talk about it first, and the deal will be completed and cannot be refunded." Taking out a small bag and carrying away 5 pounds of lingmi, Chen Sanchi left happily. This silly kid, after all, is too young. The discarded seeds I picked up were exchanged for 5 kilograms of lingmi for nothing, which can be considered as a profit. Chen An poured the rice into the rice jar. Returning to the yard, take out the Qingying grass seeds that were just exchanged for 5 pounds of lingmi. Qingying grass seed, slightly damaged internally, can be moisturized and repaired by Xiaocheng Lingyu technique. He smiled slightly at the corner of his mouth and said, "Since Chen An is willing to exchange, he must have made some money. However, even if he only buys 5 pounds of lingmi, I am not at a loss." Chen An took out 6 of the seeds, collected the rest, and then dug a few shallow pits with a shovel, burying them and paying close attention. "Woo, I'm injured. Hurry up and use the spirit rain to ravage me fiercely." Chen An looked at the line of words in front of him and his mouth twitched. He finally understood that the more he focused and observed, the more personified the information became. After planting the purchased silver leaf jute and thick soil mushroom seeds one by one, the spiritual rain technique can be applied. A cloud and rain condensed above the small courtyard, with a hint of rain mixed with a faint spiritual energy, nourishing the seeds just planted under the soil. Feels a bit better, but please increase the effort. After using the spirit rain spell 3 times in a row, 6 green Yingqiao seeds were satisfied and their status showed some normalcy. At this point, I have also finished my busy work. Crowding is a bit too much, let's make do for it first. Chen An returned to the room, finished a large bowl of fragrant spiritual rice, and continued practicing without stopping. In just 3 days, the silver leaf and jute seeds had already sprouted tender buds, drilling out black soil and showing a delightful growth. 3 days later, with Chen An's every request and hard work, the seeds of Qingying grass gradually moved and no longer remained silent. According to the displayed status, at most in 3 to 5 days, it will probably sprout. Chen An passed the end of the month and welcomed the beginning of the month while waiting for Lingji to grow vigorously. As usual, today is the time to go to the affairs hall to collect the spiritual rice. Early in the morning, Chen An took care of the spiritual plants in the courtyard, left the door, and headed straight to the affairs hall. On this day, there are more members of the clan coming and going to the affairs hall. When encountering acquaintances, Chen An also greeted them one by one. Chen An. Just as they stepped into the family courtyard, 3 people walked towards them, who were the 3 apprentices of the 3 elders who had become their master of talismans. Chen Dazhuang carried a bag of lingmi on his shoulder. Against the backdrop of his muscular figure, the 30-pound lingmi was like a towel draped over his shoulder. "Ha, how have you been lately? Chen Dazhuang rubbed his head and warmly greeted him. What else can we do? Just keep going. Several people are of similar age, so Chen An naturally knows each other well. Chen Jilan, who was one step behind, had a delicate and fair face with a hint of greenness. She wore a sweet smile and exuded a youthful aura. She walked over with brisk steps and empty hands. Chen Dengming, holding a bag behind her, looked at her waist with envy in his eyes, and his gaze fell on an old grey bag. Chen An also noticed Chen Dingming's gaze and looked in the direction, suddenly feeling surprised. The storage bag. She is truly the daughter of the fourth elder, and her wealth is extraordinary. Even the worn-out storage bag is worth 50 spirit stones. Even if he doesn't eat or drink, he will have to plant for half a year to buy it. This is what my father gave me as a sign of encouragement when I joined the sect of the three elders. Chen Jilan felt 3 scorching gazes around her and proudly twisted her not-so-plump buttocks at Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Looking at Chen Dazhuang, who were staring intently and recklessly, Chen An was speechless for a moment and didn't know if he was looking at the storage bag. Several young girls gathered together, inevitably boasting and showing off their recent successes. For example, how is the progress of drawing symbols, and the appreciation of the three elders on a regular basis? The fastest progress among the three is Chen Jilan. It is said that if there are no accidents, she can reach a success rate of 30% in about a year, becoming a true first-level lower-level talisman master. The progress of the other two is not slow either, and there is a high chance that they will both advance to become talismans next year. Talking about this matter over and over again made Chen An quite uninteresting. He immediately apologized and said goodbye to the three of them, using the excuse that he still had to go and collect spiritual rice. I went to the affairs hall to collect lingmi, and then returned to my own courtyard. Looking at the tender green sprouts all over the yard, as well as 2 jade fruit trees struggling to bear fruit again, I felt a sense of relief in my heart. Fortunately, I still have hope in Lingji Road. Even if I haven't become a talisman master, I can still go further by means. A mere talisman, why bother? Carefully check the spiritual values, most of them are in a normal state. There is only one plant, which is somewhat different. I'm so thirsty, the soil outside is too dry, I just want to shrink back. This is the green grass that has just emerged from the ground. There's no way, it's difficult to serve first-level intermediate-level spiritual plants. Compared to silver leaf jute and jasper fruit, the demand for spiritual rain technique is slightly higher. Chen An put down the spiritual rice and condensed a small and rich rain cloud by pinching the formula. A wave of spiritual rain fell, nourishing many tender sprouts that had just broken through the ground. Observing the state of Qingying grass at the same time, seeing that it was satisfied, the spell was finally cast. Chapter 5. Soul Accumulation Technique. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, time flies by. In the blink of an eye, it was already the end of the year. Chen An sat cross-legged on the quiet room, silently practicing the Qingmu technique. Since the last time his proficiency in this technique skyrocketed, with the assistance of spiritual rice, his daily cultivation speed has not been slow. The spiritual rice I receive every month, I saved some food and barely managed to hold on until now. At this moment, Chen An, who had just finished eliminating a pot of spiritual rice, became more and more powerful with the operation of his martial arts. The speed at which spiritual energy flowed into his acupoints also became faster. The 2 spiritual power clouds within the Dantian area had already grown to their limit in no time. At this point, the benefits of taking Lingmi were reflected. Without a moment's effort, with the assistance of Lingmi, Chen An's body emitted a roar. On top of the 2 spiritual power clouds, a third one slowly squeezed out, only the size of a soybean, like a small lotus with just exposed sharp edges. At this point, in the Dantian, 3 clouds are stacked in layers. Who? After a long time, Chen An opened his eyes and exhaled a mouthful of turbid qi, feeling the changes in the dantian. His eyes were full of energy and he said, "Finally, I have practiced 3 layers of qi." Practicing the 3rd layer of qi is the starting cultivation for obtaining spiritual fields. If one can obtain 1 acre, their future life will be much better. This is a small step on the road, but a big step in farming. Stepping into the path for 3 years, in March, qi is introduced into the body. It takes more than a year to cultivate 2 levels of qi in 1 year, and reaching 3 levels of qi cultivation takes more than a year. However, relying on the pine tower of Qingying to harvest, it saved him a few months of hard work. Chen An looked out the window at the hazy moonlight, his face lost in thought, and he didn't know when these 2 trees would advance to the next level of spiritual cultivation. If he can be promoted before his next maturity, perhaps he can further improve his martial arts skills. He himself has mediocre qualifications, and even if he uses all means in this life, it is difficult to cultivate to the 9th level of qi cultivation. But now, with the means of farming and harvesting light clusters, not to mention the foundation building gold pill, he cannot have the opportunity to dominate Xianxia. However, it's not urgent. At this point, let's first claim a spiritual field. Chen An has consolidated his cultivation and the outside sky has also brightened. 6 green grass plants in the courtyard have already grown into plants, with green leaves that are about to drip, faint green fluorescence swirling around them, lush and thriving, growing happily. However, there is still some time before maturity. Looking at the progress bar, there should be another 2 or 3 months before maturity. First-grade intermediate spiritual plants, planted in lower-grade spiritual fields, will have a slightly slower maturation cycle. On the other hand, the progress bar for other spiritual plants has already passed halfway, and they will probably harvest another wave in a few days. Taking care of the spiritual plants in the courtyard as needed, Chen An left the small courtyard facing the rising sun. Affairs Hall. Chen An met the elder and informed him of his purpose. You have some talent in farming, I already knew you would choose this path. The elder's face was flushed, and he checked Chen An's cultivation and recorded it. After confirmation, take out a spiritual field map and let it be chosen. A whole 100 acres of inferior spiritual fields are all distributed on the south side of Yinwu Mountain. It was cultivated by the ancestors of the Chen family for generations, serving as the foundation for the family's establishment. The entire Qingyun domain is deeply cultivated by the Chen and Lu families. All 100 acres are low-grade spiritual fields, and the difference is not significant. Chen An chose a spiritual field in the corner that was closest to home. Complete the process. The elder gave Chen An a deep glance and said, "The spiritual fields within the clan are easy to obtain, but I need to tell you some rules. Lingmi is the foundation of our Chen family's foundation. According to clan rules, in the early stages of qi cultivation, cultivators' skills are not proficient. Over 70% of the Ling Tian must be planted with yellow sprouted rice, and the remaining 3 layers are chosen by oneself. Yellow sprouted rice is easy to survive, and the Chen family has rich experience in planting it, making it easy to solve problems. Novices planting this spiritual plant are the most reliable. How to distribute the harvest. Chen An is more concerned about taxation. There is no tax, just sell more than half of the lingmi to the family. Chen An nodded upon hearing this. On weekdays, he had also heard that there were spiritual fields rented out in the square market under the Qingyun Sect, but at least 30% were paid in, and at most 50% or 60% were paid in. Compared to casual training, the treatment in the family is countless times better. After speaking, the elder added, of course, when selling lingmi to the family, the price will also be favorable. Every 3 months, the second elder Chen Rui will explain farming spells and answer your questions. You can go there on your own. After explaining the precautions, Chen An was given a small bag and 3 spell secret books. Inside the bag are yellow sprout rice seeds, and the spells are Qingyun sword finger and earth drawing technique, which can be considered as new benefits. These two spells, combined with the spirit rain spell, are necessary for farming and can be said to be essential skills for Lady Lingji. Just a spell alone saved Chen An a considerable amount of spiritual stone. Chen An immediately thanked the elder and turned around to leave. Ling Tian was only 3 miles away from his residence. Taking advantage of the early weather, Chen An picked up a hoe and headed straight to the ground. Huanya rice is extremely cold resistant. As long as it is planted in a spiritual field, it can survive throughout the year. If planted properly, it ripens around March. This is also one of the reasons why the Chen family chose this spiritual value. I dug a pit and planted yellow bud rice seeds one by one. As for the remaining 3 parts of the land, Chen An plans to keep them for now, and then buy some seeds to plant after selling the spiritual plants in the courtyard. I'm not in a hurry for these few days. Chen An rested on the ground with his waist for a moment, took a sip of the mountain spring water from the kettle, and felt a slight relief from fatigue before waving his hand to condense a cloud of rain. Xiaocheng's spirit rain technique can be used with just one breath, covering a range of approximately 3 parts of the land. After 3 consecutive spells, the 1-acre spiritual field was fully nourished. Before the breakthrough, using the spirit rain technique 3 times would deplete spiritual power, but now it still has a surplus of 34%. After checking the status of each seed one by one and confirming that there were no abnormalities, Chen An picked up his hoe again and braved the just falling night sky to return to his own yard. For the next few days, Chen An will come and go to Ling Tian and Xiaoyuan every day, diligently farming and providing rain as needed. The yellow sprouted rice in the spiritual field is gradually sprouting and shining with vitality. After careful care, the spiritual plants in the hospital have also reached their maturity. Harvest a high-quality silver leaf jute and find the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to obtain the hemp clothing talisman. Harvest a perfect silver leaf jute and obtain the secret to making hemp clothing talismans in an instant. A torrent of information surged in Chen An's mind. In just a short moment, the patterns and strokes of the hemp clothing talisman were all clear to his mind, as if he had already drawn years and months of time. Chen An shook his head and said, "Have you become a master of talismans?" With a heart to try, there are quite a few talismans available, but unfortunately, there are no talismans in hand. I can only try another day to find an opportunity, and if feasible, it is also a way to earn spiritual stones. It seems that the previous decision of intensive cultivation was correct. Looking at the unpicked spiritual plants, Chen An harvested them one by one. Harvest a perfect jade fruit and obtain the soul accumulation technique. After digesting the information, Chen An felt a sense of joy in his heart. Soul cultivation technique is a spell that nourishes spiritual plants, providing them with more abundant spiritual energy. The wood attribute technique has the best stimulating effect. Proficient use can slightly improve the quality of spiritual plants. This is exactly the skill that Chen An currently lacks. Mind micro-movement, mobilize the spiritual power in the body, and operate one circle according to the special fluctuation frequency and established meridian route of the spiritual cultivation technique. Waving his hand, he plunged a light cluster emitting a faint blue light into the jade fruit tree in front of him. Chen An stared intently. Warm, itchy, so comfortable. Once a day, even weeds can become immortals. Chen An twitched his lips and ignored it. With his cultivation of practicing 3 layers of qi, he can only use it at most 2 or 3 times a day. Picked a small portion of the spiritual plants in the courtyard, and received a wave. The additional rewards were not too noteworthy. Dropping spiritual rain on several of the thirsty plants exhausted their spiritual power before returning to the house for cultivation. Chapter 6. I really appreciate you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. A few more days later, Chen An once again welcomed a bountiful harvest. Except for the first-grade Qingying grass, most of the other spiritual plants have matured. Harvest a thick soil mushroom and obtain thick soil essence. *2 Harvest a high-quality thick soil mushroom and obtain a soil thorn talisman. Soil essence is a special type of soil formed and is a material used for refining magical tools. The earth thorn talisman is a first-order lower-level attack talisman, which is a surprising surprise. A few items are worth about 3 or 4 lower-grade spirit stones, and they are truly profitable. Chen An packed up the harvested spiritual plants and took them directly to the affairs hall for sale. The elder saw it and held several spiritual plants, smiling with wrinkles on his face, unable to put it down. A perfect quality spiritual plant. You are indeed not easy. Keep it up, and if you can advance to the middle stage of Qi cultivation in the future, I guarantee that you will definitely have your share in the 10-acre first-level intermediate spiritual field in the clan. Chen An smiled and said, "The elder has praised me falsely. It all depends on you taking good care of the younger generation." After the elder finished his inspection, the total value of the spiritual stones was 19, which was also considered a small fortune. A perfect jade fruit has 2 spirit stones, while a perfect silver leaf and jute have 1 spirit stone. Ordinary, high-quality, and perfect quality spiritual plants only have a 20.3% difference in efficacy, and are also first-order inferior products, so the price naturally won't be too outrageous. Do you have talismans here? The elder was slightly surprised and said, "A talisman pen. Do you want to draw talismans, kid?" I have plenty of free time to farm on weekdays, and I want to master another craft to help myself. The elder across from him pondered for a moment, glanced at the 19 spirit stones on the table, and pulled out a black rune pen from behind the counter that was almost bald. This is a talisman pen that the girl from the 4 elders' hometown has replaced. It can still make do, but it won't be long. If you want to buy it, you can take it. Even if the talisman is not successful, you won't lose much. Just give me 8 spirit stones. Chen An breathed a sigh of relief. The intact first-level lower-grade rune pen would require at least a few dozen spirit stones, and this time he was able to find a bargain. I handed in the spirit stone and exchanged 6 seeds of sword leaf grass, as well as several spirit seeds and a bottle of blood ink for a talisman. Sword leaf grass, a lower-level spiritual plant, has leaves like a sword and is the material for refining standard swords. After 2 seasons of harvest, Chen An also figured out some patterns. If expected, the harvest of this spiritual plant will be related to magical tools. Your talent in farming is not low, so don't be too addicted to talismans and waste your land. I have also heard about your failure in the assessment at the 3 elders' office. If you don't achieve the talismans, quickly stop and focus on farming. Although the elder's warning was useless, Chen An also felt grateful. Thank you very much for the elder's guidance, I will save you. Make a purchase and replace all the remaining spirit stones with spirit rice. The newly earned spirit stones are gone again, far from enough to spend. But as long as you harvest a season of yellow sprout rice, life should be much better. At least you don't have to spend spiritual stones to buy spiritual rice anymore. Eating your own grown rice is enough. Chen An, who was waiting at the counter, shook his hand when he saw the elder Xinglingmi. He accidentally filled 5 more ladles, weighing 5 or 6 pounds. The potential is mediocre, and we need to work harder in the future. The elder calmly handed Chen An the Lingmi bag, which weighed a full 5 pounds. From the burning gaze in the other person's eyes, one can interpret a sentence. I really appreciate you. Thank you very much for the kindness of the elder, young people remember. Chen An looked in his eyes and bowed. For the actions of the other party, he only considers the old man in a good mood and takes care of the younger generation. Farewell to the elder, Chen An returned to the yard and planted the seeds of sword leaf grass, silver leaf jute, and thick soil mushroom. The spiritual rain technique was used to nourish them, and it was considered that the planting was completed. At the same time, he did not forget the 1-acre lower-grade spiritual field outside. I specially bought the seeds of the jade fruit this time to plant them in the family's spiritual field. The spiritual rain and spiritual accumulation techniques for harvesting jade fruits are what he needs. The cultivation in the family's spiritual field leads to high-quality spiritual values, harvesting spiritual rain techniques, and the cultivation in the hospital leads to perfect qualities, harvesting spiritual accumulation techniques. Not only low-key and not I-catching, but also without sacrificing gains, it can be said to kill 2 birds with 1 stone by combining both spells. Little one, is this the spiritual field you cultivate? Chen An had just finished his busy work in the field when he saw a thin and black old man dressed in grey cloth and hemp walking over, his eyes shining brightly at the lush lingji in front of him. Judging from this growth, there may be many high-quality rice plants. It is planted by younger generations. This old man Chen An knows that his name is Chen Fugue, who cultivates 4 levels of qi and is an old spiritual farmer in his clan. I heard that I have been farming for most of my life, with rich experience in farming and a decent level of magic. However, I am too old and my cultivation has not reached the standard, so I have been farming in the lower-level spiritual field. Previously, there was no interaction between the two, but today is the first time they have spoken face-to-face. TSK, you planted it well. You have this kind of craftsmanship at a young age, it's truly terrifying for future generations. Chen An's heart moved and he humbly said, Senior, I have praised you. I am still young, and you are highly respected in this area. I need to learn more from you. Upon hearing these words, Chen Fugue's face turned red and he couldn't help but nod, clearly very pleased with the words. He took 2 steps forward and sat down directly on the mound of dirt on the ground. The way of farming is not just about good quality. If you encounter pests, rodents, and locusts, even if you plant well, you won't reap anything. Chen An heard this and quickly sat down next to the other person, saying, Please advise me, Senior. Chen Fugue didn't show any interest and approached Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com with a serious tone, saying, Do you need to master all 3 farming spells? Especially the Gung Golden Sword Finger, when faced with a crisis, its greatest impact is on it. Especially the black nematode that has been spreading recently. Look, in the field ahead, Chen Fengshua is pulling weeds with his butt out. His spiritual field has been a mess for the black nematode a few days ago, losing as much as 30% of the yellow sprout rice. Chen An felt a chill in his heart and said, I wonder if there is a way to prevent and control this black nematode. Chen Fugue pursed his lips and said, The larvae of the black nematode are as thin as hair and have a transparent body. They are extremely difficult to detect in daily life, and there are very few ways to control them unless a formation is set up. At this point, he sneered, if you set up a formation for a small yellow bud rice, even the lowest level formation will not make ends meet and you won't make much profit. Only when the black nematode grows slightly larger and becomes darker in color can it be detected. If you want to drive away the plant without damaging it, only the small Gung sword finger can be effective. After chatting with the old man for a while, Chen An absorbed a lot of farming experience and was greatly benefited. He only found out now that Chen Fengshua had suffered such a huge loss, and he thought the other party had already perfectly solved the insect infestation. Since you're here to farm, it means your cultivation skills are not very good. In this situation, there should be no hope. Stop thinking and farm honestly. If you have time, you can go to the Spring Wind Tower in Qingyun for a walk. It's not in vain. TSK, you don't know where the fairy is enchanting and the water is tender. I don't know why, but the old man's smile is getting more and more lewd, and the chat content is getting more and more inappropriate. Chen An originally wanted to gain more farming experience, but now he has no interest in it. Excusing that farming had consumed a lot of energy and was very tiring, I said goodbye and got up to go back. Chapter 7. Insect Pests. You are listening at novel full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, dressed in the darkness, Chen An returned home. After cooking the pot of lingmi and eating it, I meditated and regained my spiritual power. The lights in the quiet room are like beans. Chen An took out the talisman paper, spread it out on the table, held the talisman pen, and gently dipped it in blood ink. I quickly reviewed the patterns and drawing techniques of the hemp clothing symbols in my mind. Then he concentrated his mind and calmed down, his spiritual power flowing through the pen, injecting into the tip of the pen. The bright red blood ink flashed with a dazzling radiance. In an instant, dragons and snakes walked on the talisman paper, and in no time, the last stroke was drawn. The runes on the talisman flicker slightly along the pattern and then disappear in a flash. It's done. Chen An put down the talisman and held it in his hand, looking more and more delighted. Take a moment to appreciate and strike while the iron is hot. 10 pieces were drawn in one breath, forming 3 talismans. Chen An nodded to himself. It seemed that he was already a true first-level lower-level talisman master. Pay more attention to silver leaf jute on weekdays, strive to improve its quality, and come up with several talisman insights and experiences. Draw talismans and earn more spiritual stones when the time comes. Even if you buy some nourishing pills to help with cultivation, it's not a problem. More than 2 months later. The spiritual plants in the courtyard and the spiritual field are growing happily, growing slightly every day. Chen An also tirelessly travels between the 2 places every day. But on this day, when he came to take care of the family's spiritual field, Chen An's heart sank and he quickly approached to investigate. The loss of spiritual energy is severe, and I feel like my body has been emptied. I'm probably sick. I checked the entire Huanya rice plant and found no abnormalities. He remembered the characteristics of the black thread worm mentioned by Chen Fugue, pondered for a moment, activated his spiritual power, and infused his spiritual cultivation technique into the yellow bud rice in front of him. In no time, I realized that the spiritual power of the Yunling technique had circulated around the plant stem, slowly converging towards one of the leaves, outlining a shape as thin as hair. Black line worm. Still with a transparent body, it indicates that the parasite has not been parasitic for long and should have been treated in time. After inspecting the Ling Tian, it was found that a total of 5 plants had already infested with insects. Seeing this situation, Chen An ran straight towards a small estate within the Ling Tian area without saying a word. That is the residence of the second elder Chen Rui. If there is a problem with the Ling Tian, it is definitely right to find him. The bad news is that the second elder is not here. According to his apprentice, it seems that he has gone to Qingyun Fang City under the Qingyun Sect. The good news is that a member of the clan who practices Qi at the 5th level is also waiting here for the second elder. Chen An knew that this person was one of the top 10 farmers in the clan who cultivated first-class and mid-level spiritual fields, Chen Luan. At the family meeting, when the head of the family, Chen Qing, awarded him the Pinling field, Chen An met him once. As the outstanding cultivator and the successor of the second elder, the Gung Golden Sword Finger must have become a small success. Brother Chen Luan, are you also looking for second elder? Chen An walked forward and bowed with a bow. Oh, yes, what's up with this brother? Chen Luan's dark face flashed with a hint of doubt. Chen Luan has a face of about 30, but he also practices Qingmu Gong, which has the effect of delaying aging. His actual age is already over 40 years old. I have long heard of my elder brother's ability to farm, and I have admired him for a long time. Today, upon seeing him, he truly lives up to his reputation. Where, it's just a false name, not just rolling in the mud. Chen Luan felt embarrassed and touched his nose, with a hint of smile unconsciously appearing on his face. The two exchanged a few pleasantries and slightly narrowed the distance between each other. By the way, what's the matter with brother Chen An coming to find elder heir? It's not a big deal, it's just that the fields are infested with black worms, Chen An wrote lightly. Ah. Black line worm. This is not a small matter, did someone find a solution? Chen An frowned, showing great concern for the Lingtian disaster. I'm here to seek the help of the second elder to solve the pest problem. Chen An stomped his foot and said, "Oh, what are you waiting for, elder heir? He has gone to Qingyun city and doesn't know when he will come back. Hurry up, take me there." The harm of the black thread worm is not to be underestimated. Chen An did not expect that this clan brother was so concerned about pest control. Without further ado, thank you and lead the way ahead. Under the scorching noon sun, the two of them quickly arrived at the ground. Chen An pointed to several spiritual plants that had been infected with black nematodes. Chen An didn't waste any time either. He went to check, but when he came up, he found that the leaves were on both sides, and the stems were all empty. He furrowed his brows slightly, closed his eyes, and let out his divine sense. In a moment, he indeed discovered the slowly wriggling black thread worm. Chen An had been farming for many years and naturally recognized this worm. This Chen An brother has not yet possessed divine consciousness and can discover black thread worm larvae, which is really not easy. Since he discovered the black thread worm, Chen An no longer hesitated. His face turned cold, and a small and powerful Qingyun sword aura shot out from his fingertips. Under the control of San Chen An, the sword qi transformed into strands of silk thread, and the black thread worm was driven away and killed in the fifth and second movements. Chen An looked on and was amazed. His power should be enough to kill. Before long, several black nematodes from Lingji were treated. Chen An wiped the sweat off his forehead before waiting for Chen An to speak, and said, "I used my divine sense to check all the other spiritual plants and killed the larvae and eggs of the black thread worm. Your spiritual field is temporarily fine. Thank you, brother clan." The other party inspected and processed one plant, and Chen An followed behind to inspect another plant. The pests in the spiritual field have indeed been eradicated. He expressed gratitude on his lips and didn't have any free time in his hands. Chen An took out 2 spirit stones and handed them to the other party. Previously, he learned from Chen Fugue that it was about this price to drive out and inspect the black nematode on 1 acre of land. Seeing the spirit stone, Chen An naturally did not refuse and happily reached out to take it. These jade fruits are growing well and should be able to produce many high-quality fruits. It seems that the Chen An brothers are also well versed in farming. Chen An took a few breaths and stared at the 3 ripe, moist and bright red jade fruits, couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. 10 jade fruit trees are about 2 feet tall, growing well and bearing fruits of all sizes. Where, how can one say, "I have a deep understanding of farming," in front of my elder brother? After a few polite words, Chen An glanced at Chen An, who was panting and exhausted. Seeing that the other party had no intention of leaving, he shook his head helplessly. Zhaozuiyuan.com reaching over the high-quality fruit, he picked a regular quality jade fruit and handed it to the other person. "Brother of the hard-working tribe, eat a fruit to quench your thirst." I'm feeling a bit thirsty after all the work. Since my brothers are so kind, I won't hesitate. Xiaoqing, Chen An looked at Chen An's increasingly distant figure and silently sighed. This person looked honest and kind-hearted, and he didn't expect to be greedy for the advantage of his little brother. But it doesn't matter anymore, at least the crisis of the black worm has been resolved. After intentional or unintentional testing before, it was found that only he could see the light cluster. He bent down to pick it up and, without any accidents, rewarded it with an additional jade fruit. Fortunately, the young master has his own abilities. You can take one and there is one more. Carrying the jade fruit into his arms, Chen An happily returned home. In the courtyard, the blade of sword leaf grass is pitch black and shaped like a sword, faintly flashing with a sharp cold light. In this spiritual value, it is quite eye-catching. Silver leaf jute, jasper fruit, and thick soil mushroom are also growing well and have already matured for the most part. The green grass with sparkling green leaves and the progress bar are also approaching completion, which can be said to be a great situation. Checked the spiritual value and lowered the spiritual rain according to the requirements. By using the soil diversion technique, the spiritual power in the soil of these two parts was cleared and distributed evenly. If the spiritual field is planted for a long time, the distribution of spiritual energy underground will be uneven, affecting the growth of spiritual plants. The earth drawing technique is a spell that solves this problem. After taking care of her, Chen An didn't say a word and went straight back to the quiet room to practice the gung gold sword finger. In order to master and become proficient as soon as possible, in order to avoid spending money on people and allowing them to take advantage in the next insect disaster. However, I don't know what kind of spiritual plant can grow the gung gold sword finger. Chapter 8. Planted the Qi Nourishing Pill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, 10 days later. After Chen An woke up early in the morning, he didn't have time to eat and hurriedly ran into the courtyard. After 3 months of planting, it's time to pick the ripe fruits. Harvest a perfect silver leaf jute and obtain the secret to making hemp clothing talismans. Harvest a perfect jade fruit and obtain the soul accumulation technique. Harvest a perfect thick soil essence and obtain the earth drawing technique. Harvest a green grass and obtain a nourishing pill. Chen An, who was immersed in a bountiful harvest, couldn't help but feel a shock in his spirit. Yang Qi Dan. The affairs hall within the clan, priced at 15 yuan per bottle of inferior spirit stone. 6 spiritual stones are also worth about 9. Chen An looked at the green pill happily and couldn't help but sigh. Qingying grass is truly the main medicine for refining nourishing qi pills, and the harvest is not bad. The only regret is that the first-level intermediate spiritual plant has an additional maturity period of 3 months. Harvest all the spiritual plants, 2 perfect quality jade fruits, and a perfect thick soil mushroom, which have improved the proficiency of both the spiritual cultivation technique and the soil attraction technique. The effect of the previously introduced spiritual cultivation technique was not very obvious, and the proficiency level should have some initial effect. The spell can only be tried again another day, as he has more important things to do at the moment. After collecting the elixirs and spiritual fruits, Chen An picked up his sickle and walked out of the courtyard. Huanya rice has been planted for 3 months and has now fully matured. Arriving at the field, there were not many busy tribe members. Because everyone grows at different times and matures at different times. Chen An wielded a sickle, his left hand swept over the rice straw, and cut it with one blade. Leaving it aside, lightly touched the light cluster. Harvest a yellow-sprouted rice plant and obtain a yellow-sprouted rice seed. Harvest a high-quality yellow bud rice plant and obtain a high-quality yellow bud rice seed. Harvest a perfect yellow bud rice plant and obtain a perfect yellow bud rice seed. Hoo. Chen An harvested the yellow-sprouted rice from an acre of spiritual field with a loud and noisy sound, and also obtained many seeds. After taking a few breaths, he sat down on the ground and opened 3 cloth bags in his hand. The additional harvest of yellow-sprouted rice turned out to be seeds. I originally planned to harvest 1 plant and obtain 2. Fortunately, at the very least, it can save some money on purchasing seeds. After resting for a moment, I picked the jade fruit from the field. Suddenly, a surge of spiritual rain spell insights and experiences emerged from the bottom of my heart, appearing 4 times in a row. Directly elevating Chen An's Lingyu technique to another level. De Cheng. Chen An was delighted in his heart. Under his deliberate control, most of the jade fruits were of high quality, and he obtained a total of 4 spiritual rain spells. If unleashed, it can cover this acre of spiritual field in just one go, and the transmission and reception are based on the heart, with an increase in spiritual power content. Today, it can be said that I have gained a lot, and I have also received a wave of pills to assist in cultivation, which can lead to a faster improvement in cultivation. Carrying the seed in his arms, Chen An walked happily to the office. As I passed by the courtyard of the second elder, I glanced and found that it was already crowded with people. Sitting around an old man with dark skin, inside and outside. After listening for a moment, Chen An's heart became clear that the second elder had returned from the local market at some point. Today should be the day when he taught farming spells. There are 70 or 80 members in the family, half of whom are spiritual farmers. Except for Xiao Cheng and those who are busy, about 20 people have come. Chen An listened attentively and found that Elder Air was talking about the technique of spiritual rain. He has some level, but not much. He even heard a few points that were not fully explained, and for a while, he didn't enjoy listening. Judging from its level, it should look like it's about to become a big success. Qingyun cultivators, most of their spells revolve around the beginner and proficiency levels. Some have been immersed in lust for many years, and after working hard for half a lifetime, only 1 or 2 spells can be considered as small achievements. If you want to achieve great success in cultivation, talent is indispensable. And Chen An was able to achieve great success in a short period of time. If it were to be spread, it would be absolutely shocking. After listening for a few words, Chen Anton felt bored and turned to the affairs hall. The elder is absent, and a clan brother named Chen Zhao is on duty here. Dao Ming's intention was to lure the other party to his own territory. 1 acre of Lingtian can generally produce 300 to 500 kilograms of yellow sprouted rice. The specific output depends on the quality of the Lingtian and the farming level of the Lingnong. Chen Zhao put the rice into a storage bag and returned to the affairs hall to weigh it. It weighed about 400 pounds, which was considered a bountiful harvest. The high-quality lingmi among them weighs up to 50 pounds. The purchase of lingmi in the clan is priced at 7 pounds per lingshire for ordinary quality, while 6 pounds per lingshire for high-quality, which is considered relatively high. The family also needs to work hard to handle the rice, and the shops selling lingmi in the local market also have to pay rent, so the remaining profit will not be too much. Chen An measured it and decided to keep 270 pounds, including the high-quality 50 pounds, and sold the rest to the affairs hall. Along with the other spiritual plants harvested, they were also sold together. A total of 62 spirit stones were obtained. The affairs hall also sells sword leaf grass seeds, and Chen An buys 6. Having replaced enough other spiritual plant seeds, Chen An carefully collected the spiritual stones. Just go back, brother. After a few days, turn the rice into spiritual rice, and I will send someone to deliver the spiritual rice to you. Chen Zhaoshan knew that Chen An was planting yellow sprout rice for the first time. In recent months, many spiritual fields have been affected by black nematodes, and a harvest of over 300 pounds is already good. Even a few ethnic people have not reached this number. As a result, he couldn't help but look at Chen An with surprise. Thank you very much, brother clan. Chen An glanced enviously at the storage bag on the other person's waist and asked in a low voice, do you know if the office has a lower-priced storage bag? Is the price lower? It doesn't seem like. Chen Zhao lowered his head and pondered for a moment, then took out a tattered gray bag from his arms. This is the one I have eliminated myself, and it should still be usable for a while. It's useless to keep it. If you want it, I won't take advantage of you. Just give me 10 spirit stones. Chen An was quite tempted and found that the price at www.zhaoshuyuan.com is indeed affordable. Immediately, he suppressed the prepared bargaining words, paid 10 spirit stones, and left happily with a storage bag. Returning home, I first planted 6 green grass, 5 silver leaf jute, and 3 thick soil mushroom seeds one by one, and then applied the spiritual rain technique again. Especially when planting Qingying grass, be extremely careful. After all, Qingying grass can grow qi nourishing pills, which is the foundation of cultivation and cannot be neglected at all. After thinking for a moment, I decided to give all the remaining spiritual power to sword leaf grass. After all, the sword leaf grass is only a few days away from maturity, and it may be related to magical tools. You should know that a brand new inferior magical tool is worth 30 to 40 spirit stones. After 2 spiritual cultivation techniques, the pitch-black leaves of the sword leaf grass became even more profound, as if a sharp sword was inserted into the black soil. Chen An looked at Lingji with a focused gaze. So comfortable, not enough, I still need to eat, grow into the strongest grass. Chen An's mouth twitched, feeling the remaining spiritual power in the dantian, and couldn't help but shake his head. It's gone, there's not a drop left. Immediately, Chen An silently walked into the quiet room, holding on to his empty body, and sat down on a cushion. After taking a few breaths, without hesitation, he took out a nourishing pill and looked up to take it. Suddenly, a soft and thick spiritual energy surged within the body, as if it could never stop flowing. The third group of spiritual power clouds is like a sponge absorbing water, eagerly absorbing this spiritual power and slowly strengthening itself. The effect of pills is truly extraordinary. Compared to Lingmi, this spiritual power is several times stronger, which is worth the price of 1 bottle of 15 spirit stones. No, it doesn't seem to cost any spirit stones. This is a kind of green and translucent grass planted. Chapter 9. Trading Fair. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, in the early morning, a wisp of cooking smoke rose above a small courtyard with 2 green pine trees planted in front of the door. It has been 3 days since the sale of Lingmi. Yesterday afternoon, Chen Zhao had already sent someone to deliver Huanya rice to Chen An. Ling rice is abundant, so naturally every meal is fed on it. The spiritual power brought by each meal is not much, but after years of accumulation, it is also quite considerable. Chen An had a hearty meal in the kitchen and walked steadily to the small courtyard. The leaves of the 6 sword-leaved grasses were pitch black like ink, and the pen stood upright on the root and stem. Looking from a distance, it really looked like a sharp sword. Chen An walked forward step by step, confirming that the progress bar was full, and reached out to gently pick down 6 sword-leaf grasses. Harvest a sword leaf grass and obtain quenched sword leaves. Harvest a high-quality sword leaf grass and obtain the standard inferior sword technique. Harvest a perfect sword leaf grass and obtain the gung gold sword finger. Chen An stood dumbfounded, his mind roaring with excitement, and a torrent of experience and insights from using the gung gold sword finger surged into his heart. In just a short moment, the level of Gung Jinjian's finger had already risen to the proficiency level. After regaining his senses, Chen An's right hand clasped his fingers together, and under the stirring of spiritual power in his body, a thin sword energy shot directly into the soil under his feet. Looking at the smooth and slender pit, Chen An nodded secretly and said, "The power is already quite good. Even if it cannot compare to Chen Luan's ability to turn sword energy into silk, planting 1 or 2 seasons of sword leaf grass should also achieve it." Thinking of this, Chen An was in a good mood and put all 4 black sword leaves, a standard inferior magic sword, and 6 sword leaf grasses on the ground into a storage bag. Although the standard sword is not as good as the ordinary sword, it can still be worth 17 or 18 spirit stones, which can be considered a considerable income. Take out the prepared sword leaf grass seeds, and Chen An carries a hoe to plant them one by one. Waving his hand, he condensed a rain cloud, and a bean-sized spiritual rain fell with a loud sound, nourishing the spiritual plant seeds under the soil. After taking care of Lingji, Chen An went to the affairs hall and sold the sword leaf grass. He didn't sell any of the extra gains. After all, it's difficult to explain the source. One day, I will follow the elders of the family to the Qingyun Square market under the Qingyun Sect and sell them together. In the next round of procurement, San Lingxi bought 30 talismans and 15 Lingshi bought a bottle of nourishing qi pill. The young Qi Dan was refined by the second elder Chen Rui. He not only had a deep understanding of farming, but also was a first-order alchemist. Due to the fact that there is only one true alchemist in the clan, most of the pills refined are only sufficient for internal use, and there are relatively few for external sales. After leaving the affairs hall, Chen An touched his bulging storage bag and ran into Chen Fengshua, who was rushing towards him. "Brother Fengshua, where are you going in a hurry?" Chen Fengshua looked up and saw Chen An. He grinned and said, "So it's Chen An brothers. Where else can we go?" "Of course, we should go to the family square and attend the trade fair." Trade fair. Chen An suddenly remembered that he had been poor and had never participated in this so-called trade fair before. "Now that my waist is bulging, I can go and take a look." "That's great, go together." The trade fair is located on the central square of the family courtyard. When the two of them didn't have much time together, they saw 4 to 5 or 10 people crowded together, some setting up stalls on the spot, some bargaining, and some arguing until their faces turned red and they wanted to fight. Chen An is not worried about any danger. Even in the family courtyard, no matter how fierce the argument is, no one dares to take direct action. After walking a few steps, the two of them separated and headed towards the booth they were interested in. At the stall of a middle-aged man with a beard, Chen An stopped. First-grade intermediate spiritual plant fire velvet flower seeds. Except for seeds, all other artifacts and miscellaneous items will not display information. How do I sell fire velvet seeds? The big man raised his eyelids, his eyes flashing with a brilliant light, and said in a deep voice, 5 spirit stones per piece, no bargain. Chen An nodded to himself, the price was moderate. "I'll take it all." After paying the lingsher, Chen An is about to leave. The big man suddenly reached out his hand to stop him, and in a low voice, he said, "Do you want forget worry grass? The price is favorable." Chen An's eyelids twitched, this old man was quite playful. "No interest." Refusing the han, Chen An turned his head and left. After wandering for a while, I saw nothing useful and was about to go home when I turned my head and saw Chen Dazhuang squatting in the corner setting up a stall. "Big brother, set up a stall." Chen Dazhuang scratched his head and stood up with a bold tone, "Brother Chen An, take a look. There's something worth considering, and I'll give you a discount." The booth is relatively rudimentary, with a long piece of cloth spread on the ground and a pile of talismans placed. There are even hemp clothing symbols that Chen An has already mastered inside. Taking advantage of Chen An's observation gap, Chen Dazhuang felt quite proud and said, "These are all drawings I have made recently, and I won't hide them from you. Last month, I became a true first-level lower-level talisman master." There are many talismans on the booth, probably including the shares of Chen Jilan and Chen Dengming. Chen An didn't say it out loud, but praised, "Brother Dazhuang really has good skills. With such a skill, he is much stronger than me in farming. However, as a farming cultivator, buying so many talismans is of no use. To put it bluntly, farming steadily is much safer than hunting monsters outside." Chen An secretly pondered in his heart that if he could accumulate some talismans in the future and set up a stall here to sell them, it would also be a source of income. After a few pleasantries, Chen An said goodbye and left. At this point, Chen Fengshua had already finished wandering around and the two of them happened to go back together. Just on the way, Chen Fengshua didn't know what he was holding in his hand, with a mysterious expression on his face. Zhaozuiyuan.com Chen An only thought that he had found a middle-grade seed that was sold as a first-order inferior seed at the trade fair, so he didn't ask much. He has occasionally heard people mention this kind of thing, but it's not very common, and even a few seeds won't cause much sensation. It can only be a casual conversation after dinner. After leaving the square, Chen An did not return to his own courtyard, but broke up with Chen Fengshua and turned to the family library. Just now at the trade fair, there were several spiritual plants and minerals that couldn't be named. Feeling deeply lacking in knowledge, I plan to come here to recharge. The inheritance of martial arts and spells in the clan is located at the office of the Grand Elder of the Affairs Hall, and the library is filled with miscellaneous books, geographical illustrations, biographies of figures, vegetation illustrations, and popular science books. The people guarding the library were dozing off, and Chen Qingying quietly walked in without waking him up. Today's family trade fair, there are hardly anyone here. After walking through several bookshelves and selecting, Chen An held several books, including Common Pests of Low-Level Spiritual Plants from Beginner to Mastery, 1,000 Questions about Low-Level Spiritual Plants, and Geographical Atlas of Qingyun Domain, and found a quiet place to read them carefully. After planting for several years, most of the content inside can be understood. Under hunger and thirst, there was also a considerable harvest. When you are too invested in something, time often passes very quickly. Time flies by rapidly, and Chen An is completely unaware of it. Until the people in charge of the library came to remind him, he suddenly realized that at some point, candles had already been lit in the building and the sky outside had already turned dark. Quickly got up and returned the book, then returned home. After inspecting and taking care of the spiritual plants in the courtyard, I went back to my house and took out the talisman paper I bought today and drew a few talismans. After exhaustion of spiritual power, take a nourishing pill and meditate for cultivation. Chapter 10. Family Competition. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, the next day. Chen An finished a pot of lingmi and came to the courtyard. First-grade intermediate fire velvet flower, commonly used to mix fire attribute blood ink for drawing talismans, can also be used as medicine and alchemy. I found several places with large gaps and planted the 5 fire velvet flower seeds I bought yesterday. There's no way, the spiritual field in the yard is not big enough to grow too many spiritual plants. It's already the limit now. If you want to expand the spiritual field, not to mention the difficulties and complexities involved, it is impossible to do so simply because the space in his courtyard is limited. Chen An stood in the same spot and scanned around, his face thoughtful. The mid-level spiritual field in the clan is said to be protected by formations every acre. Whether it is rich in spiritual energy or privacy, it is excellent. If 1 acre can be authorized by the clan to be allocated, it would be several times better than farming here. However, it's not urgent. First, elevate his cultivation to the 4th level of Qi cultivation. Otherwise, no matter how well he cultivates the land, the family will not distribute it. Taking care of Lingji, Chen An took a special look at Huaronghua and confirmed that there were no abnormalities. Chen An walked out of the courtyard door and headed straight to the ground. From a distance, a group of people gathered together, unsure of what they were talking about. Curious, Chen An leaned in. I saw Chen Fugue standing in the middle, waving his arms and passionately saying, "You've been working tirelessly on the mountain all day. I don't know what's going on outside." A few days ago, Elder Heir returned from the local market. I heard him say that our subordinate, the Lu family, was defeated. Taking advantage of the black nematode infestation in the spiritual fields of our clan, the production has dropped significantly, quietly lowering the price of spiritual rice, causing all the spiritual rice in our Chen family store to be unsold. Ah! Is this enough? How dare they? The Lius have a great harvest this year, so it's not surprising that the price is reduced. We have done the same in previous years. The problem is that the local market has encountered setbacks, and it's hard to say that the clan will have to lower the price to purchase our next season of lingmi. What can we do? Work harder on weekdays and strive to increase production slightly. Chen An listened to people of different ages talking about everything in the crowd, and his heart was also filled with a chill. It was indeed not easy to rely on the heavens for a living. The ancestors of the Chen family worked diligently, producing high-quality and slightly higher-priced lingmi, while the Lu family relied on quantity to win. The Chen family was affected by pests this time, and the harvest was not good. They were forced to raise the price of lingmi, but the Lu family took the opportunity to lower the price and hit the Chen family. The Lu family's intention to seize the market and suppress their opponents is self-evident. Although the quality of Lu's rice is poor, if the price is low enough, buying more to eat may not necessarily result in worse results than Chen's Huanya rice. Fortunately, I have sharp methods and can nip pests in the bud when they first show their ferocity. Otherwise, it will inevitably be difficult this time. Chen Fugui noticed Chen An, who was stunned in the crowd, and waved his hand at him, saying, Chen An, I heard you had a good harvest last season. Upon hearing this, everyone followed Chen Fugui's gaze and turned to look at this new farmer. Chen An sneered and said, My land is located in a remote area, far from areas with concentrated insect infestations, so it doesn't have much impact on me. A young Lingnong showed remorse on his face and said, How could I not have thought that I had chosen a remote location back then? Otherwise, the yield wouldn't have decreased by as much as 40% now. There are also older and more experienced spiritual farmers who don't think so. The spiritual energy in the edge of the spiritual field is insufficient, and when pests are infested, it's just a temporary advantage. Over the course of a year, the yield may not be as good as in good areas. Chen An smiled slightly at this and talked nonsense to them, dealing with a few things. After a while, everyone lost interest and dispersed, each returning to the fields to work hard. After everyone left, Chen An turned around and walked towards his own land. Under his diligent cultivation, the yellow sprouted rice has quietly begun to sprout, revealing tender green buds. 10 jade fruit trees stand vertically in the soil, their branches and leaves swaying in the wind. They have already sprouted tender buds and will soon bear new fruits. These first-order and lower-grade spiritual plants are carefully selected and excellent varieties. As long as they are taken care of carefully, they usually ripen once every 3 months. Tanaka's spiritual value is growing well. It seems that the harvest this season has been stable. As needed, drop the spirit rain technique and confirm that there is no abnormality in the 1-acre spiritual plant. Chen An turns around and leaves. Chen family. Conference hall. The head of the Chen family, along with the second elder Chen Rui and the fourth elder Chen Zixuan, sat in opposition around the long table. The family suffered from a pest infestation and was also suppressed by competitors, and all 3 of them had unpleasant expressions. What do the 2 elders think of the continuous troubles in the clan? Chen Qing was the first to break the silence and asked the 2 of them, his gaze scanning around before finally falling on Chen Zixuan. Chen Zixuan, the 4th elder, has a face of around 40 years old, with 2 small beards and a wealthy attire, which is completely different from ordinary family cultivators. He noticed Chen Qing's gaze and furrowed his brow slightly. What else can we do? Of course, we should buy more lingmi to regain the lost market. Otherwise, if this continues, the scattered cultivators will all go to the Lu family's rice shop. Our store's income will greatly decrease, and even paying rent will become a problem in the future. We will have to rely on our family to help us. Upon hearing this, Chen Qing's eyebrows twitched, indicating some concern about the other person's last sentence. Chen Rui, who had a dark face, shook his head gently and said, It's not easy to get enough lingmi in a short period of time. Farming requires time to cultivate. How can lingmi come from zhaozhuyuan.com? Old black farmer, what do you say? Chen Zixuan picked up his arm and threw the problem to the other party. Similar things have happened before. At most, let the tribe expand the proportion of cultivating yellow sprout rice and increase output. Let's endure this period for now. As long as the yield of yellow sprout rice increases, the Lu family naturally cannot do anything to us. Chen Qing nodded slightly at the words. The 3 of them discussed for a long time and finally adopted this method. After all, Qingyun Sect occupies most of the market, and their 2 companies only occupy a small portion, and they cannot acquire much lingmi in a short period of time. Since that's the case, second elder, let's quickly handle this matter. Chen Qing stood up, left a sentence, and left the conference hall. Old black farmer, let's split up and take action. You can handle the Lingnong side of the clan, and the Fengshe side is also not idle. I will try my best to increase the amount of lingmi purchased to alleviate some pressure on you. Let's try to get through this year first. Humph, you said it lightly. On Chen Rui's dark face, there was a hint of displeasure. Once something happened to Ling Tian, these cursed things were always arranged on his head. If you tell Lingnong to plant yellow sprout rice on all their extra 3 parts of land, although everyone may not dare to do anything on the surface, they will inevitably be scolded secretly. Chen Zishuan patted the other person's shoulder and said, those who are capable are more hardworking. Don't fuss over such a small matter. It's all for the sake of the family. Besides, you are the leader of the spiritual farmers in the family. Whoever doesn't go will go. After speaking, he chuckled and touched the storage bag around his waist. Suddenly, a seed wrapped in shallow silver threads appeared in his palm. This is a spiritual plant seed that I have collected recently. I have sent it to you, little brother. Chen Rui's eyes widened in an instant and he said, Yu 10.